Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a very, very, very special episode of. I don't know what this is called anymore. Is it FIDE time? We used to be the Chicken Chess Club. I don't know if we can really claim to be the Chicken Chess Club anymore, but I guess we're the FIDE podcast still. And
Podcast formerly known as the Chicken Chess Club.
yeah, maybe we could go with that for a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
So this week was a very big week in the chess world. There was a huge event. Some people are saying it was the biggest event that will happen the entire year. Even though it was a world championship match, this was the big event. This was the thing that everybody watched. This was the thing that everybody was talking about. And it's, I think it's very, very important for the chess world. And of course, I am talking about the FIDE Ethics Commission.
Thanks.
I know I shouldn't laugh at my own jokes, but I have to.
Yeah, someone has to.
So, maybe you can take us through what happened with the FIDE Ethics Commission. Maybe you could take us through from the start, because I know that you were obviously involved, but you've been working on this quite a lot over the past few months. So maybe we can start that way.
I think for more than a year, actually. FIDE has its own internal legal system. Maybe it makes sense to explain that, right? Where, in order for us not to have to use primarily the public court system, FIDE has its own legal system where you can settle disputes. Well, it has to have some kind of relevance to chess. If I claim that you owe me money, or you have sort of it's not enough. But if you have insulted me in a chess context, just to take a completely hypothetical thing, I would be able to sort of make.
I would never ever do that.
No, to the FIDE Ethics Committee like that, and it works like a completely normal court system. So, this is the first instance, and then there is a possibility of an appeal afterwards. And well, you can file a complaint based on basically a very strict set of rules. And Andrei Baryshpolych and me wanted to make a case against both the Chess Federation of Russia and against Arkady Dvorkovich. But luckily, also the Ukrainian Chess Federation chose to join us. And well, generally the system is that to be able to file a case against somebody, you need to have a legitimate reasons, which means that you have to be directly and personally involved. Well, it's just like not everybody can file any kind of case. Well, if you think Dvorkovich or Sutovsky had said something that damages the image of chess, it's not enough by itself. You have to have some kind of connection to it, or you have to be a chess federation. And in this case, they have, for instance, argued that me and Baryshpolych, while we did run for FIDE presidency, while we are grandmasters and so on and so forth, we don't have enough of what is called legal standing to sue the Chess Federation of Russia and Dvorkovich. But for the Ukrainian Chess Federation, it's a completely different matter, right? They are actually a country under attack. They have lost people who has died. They have had chess club bombed and so on. And they have in parts of Ukraine, which is occupied, the Russian Chess Federation is doing chess activities. So they have a very clear reason, and that's why this case was accepted, because the Ukrainian Chess Federation obviously has a right to sue Dvorkovich and Russia. So that they did, and we filed the complaint, I think, in September last year. But also, I think in a normal court case, you show up, right, and you have sort of an oral hearing. But here we are spread all over the world. So it has to be done in a written manner. So first of all, you have to get your case accepted. And that means that you provide a document where you sort of explain the charges about people. This will be filed in September, but the document is, I think, 139 pages long. So you can imagine making that takes a lot of time. I think the actual document is 20 to 30 pages, and then there's like 100 pages of documentation as well. So that took quite a while, and then, well, it starts becoming like a court case. So we make our charges. The first thing is that the president of the ethics committee looks at them and says, is this completely ridiculous, or does it have some kind of merit? He also looks at, do these people have a legitimate reason to file the case? I mean, if it only been me and Boris Paulus, he might have said, no, that's not good enough. He actually asked us to document we had a reasonable reason to do it. We tried to, but apparently we failed. But as again, Ukrainian Chess Federation, everybody understands they have a legitimate thing. So the case was accepted. Then, like in a court case, we present our case, and then they get to respond. So they have, like, I forgot, maybe 3 weeks to respond to all our charges. Then when that has happened, it's our turn to reply to their response, and then again they get to reply to our response. So there is, like, I would say, a 2 to 3 months process with back and forth, well, discussions or statements based on, well, the opponent's statements, and then there is a process where they have to make a verdict, which took like 5 to 6 months in a way. So that's why the whole case maybe took like 8-9 months, and of course our preparations took considerably longer. And things are not finished now. I mean, now the verdict is out, and we have like 3 weeks both parties to appeal, and then there will be a new process, and so on and so forth. But this is a description of how the legal system within FIDE works, and it has been like that for I guess for forever, and it's a completely standard legal system in a sports federation.
Yeah, and so I'll open the actual case now. So I've read more FIDE ethics committee decisions than a normal person has, and I've always been kind of impressed by how professional they are. Johan Sigmund is a lawyer, right? I wasn't totally sure.
I think they are all lawyers. Johan
They're all
Siegerman
lawyers. Okay, I wasn't sure about the other two, but yeah,
I think so. I mean, Johan Siegerman is a Swedish lawyer. He has his own law firm, or maybe together with one person. He's sponsoring the Siegerman and Co. chess tournament, which have even you have. I don't know if you have a financial deal with them, but at least you show up and do work. Maybe they don't.
No,
pay
I just show up. And
you just show up. Fair enough.
Just hang out.
But I mean, he has a brand in the chess world, and he was the chairperson. And then there is well, like, I mean, well, there is 3 persons in the sort of who makes a decision. So I mean, there can be a debate. There has to be a majority for sort of for the decision, and so on and so forth. Again, extremely normal. These persons are elected by the FIDE General Assembly, by the way, not for the specific case, but it's something that's elected every 4th year or whatever by the federation themselves. And well, I think Yolanda Sami is maybe she's from Trinidad. I'm not fully sure, and she's educated legally in I think Aberdeen. And Mr. Khaled Arfa, I'm not fully sure about. I forgot. I have checked it, but I don't remember fully. But well, it has a. I mean, they are all, I think, lawyers by profession and by education, but they come from different parts of the world with different backgrounds, which is entirely reasonable. And I think that, as you can see, they have not met physically, but they have online conferences, they do correspondence, and so on and so forth. And I genuinely agree with you. It is very impressive, the work they do. I mean, this is a 38-page verdict, and they had to read through more than 200 of case documents from sort of our side, and they have to check a lot of cases sort of back in time, and so on and so forth. I mean, by a normal salary standard, we're talking serious amount of money that they are volunteering to do for chess. And that they do, I mean, obviously, I think our case is very relevant and other cases are not. But I guess everyone who files a case thinks their case is specifically relevant. And they have, I mean, you have to qualify by certain standards to be able to file a case. But if you do, I mean, you pay 150 euros and you get people to take your case very seriously and do an amazing amount of work. So, well, that is a great system, no doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, their job is to just apply the FIDE regulations to the case at hand. So, like, they're from what I've seen anyway, from the documents that I've read in the previous cases, they're pretty strict, I would say, at following the kind of letter of the law. But it doesn't seem to be that they're very political. They doesn't seem to be very interested in getting involved in kind of back and forth with people.
No,
They just they look at what the rules are and they say, okay, this is how this rule applies, and that's the end of it.
I mean, they are very legally minded, and they are lawyers. I mean, if you look at the typical, let's say, an appeals committee, it can be in a FIDE event, but also a non-FIDE event. You typically get some persons that are kind of trusted, but they don't necessarily have the legal skills. And quite often, you will almost see a appeals committee trying to make a compromise rather than read the rules and make a juridical wording. And that might be good for practical things, but I generally dislike it, at least from a legal perspective. I mean, these guys are lawyers. They read the rules, they make a verdict, and that's more or less how it is, and well, how it should be in a legal system, right?
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this is a very long document. It's 38 pages. I don't think we're going to sit here and read out all 38 pages, although I think that would be fun, and I think the very few people who watch us would probably appreciate that, to be honest. But we won't do that. So where would you like to start with this document?
I mean, well, I think it makes sense to state what is the actual
and make this a little bit bigger as well.
Yeah, you can do that. But okay, here, I mean, it starts with, like in a court case, I mean, they sort of summarize that it was started on this day, who are the persons involved, and so on and so forth. I mean, I actually served in the Danish legal system. In Denmark, we have it like that you need some non-qualified persons as part of the juridical systems. I mean, people with no legal education. So for 10 years, I was a judge in Danish cases. And well, I've been part of sending people to prison for a couple of years for drug dealings as well, right? But there, you also start up the case by listing all the things. Who are the persons? Is it, I mean, has it been filed in time, a deadline kept, and so on and so forth. And it feels like a boring start to a document because we want to hear about the actual case. But it gives the impression of, well, this is a serious court. We follow very strict procedural rules, and everything has to be in order. For instance, I mean, well, if things has happened more than 3 years in the past, it doesn't qualify anymore. It doesn't matter how grave they are. We have certain deadlines and things we keep to as well. So, I mean, you can relax. I mean, all your statements from more than 3 years ago, you are fine, right? Giri, I'm sorry, your hack is only 2 years, 4 months. You have to wait 8 more months to be clear, right? But sort of, I mean, you get the idea of that. So
yeah, and I think this is a very good way to start, because I think it's important to try to not deal with the case, because then they make sure that they don't overstep their jurisdiction. They make sure they're not dealing with things that is not part of what their remit is, and then they can focus on important cases. So.
And well, it's the right move, order, and of course, both Dvorkovich and the Chess Federation of Russia says that they think that they should dismiss the case. So they start with the debating should the case be dismissed or not, and that is completely reasonable, right?
Yep. So there was this part early on where the FIDE Council asked to intervene, which I think is very unusual for FIDE ethics cases. Maybe not. I'm not sure if it's unique, but it does seem to be not something that happens very often.
I mean, that they try to intervene, I think, is strong. But for instance,
I mean, it does say request for intervention. So
yeah. I mean, well, yeah. But I mean, well, I think in the when Carlsen got a fine by the ethics, right? I think the FIDE president or the FIDE council was asked to sort of give an idea about what would be a reasonable punishment in a way. It's a bit surprising to me, but I think that's how it was done. Here, as far as we understand it, it's different, that the FIDE council actually tried to intervene. Well, they said that they interpret the rules differently, that they don't think the FIDE ethics has the right to suspend a membership nation. And well, you can argue that's fair enough. From our perspective, we were rather puzzled, and mainly it was only after this happened I suddenly got optimistic in terms of we might actually be winning, because a very reasonable line of thought is that they for some reason had the idea that we were winning the case, and they felt urged to intervene. This is purely speculation, and I'm almost accusing them of wrongdoing, which I don't want to. But well, I'm doing the Kramnik thing, right? I'm accusing them, but I'm not accusing them, right? And well, you agree with me, obviously. So I mean, but well, we actually got quite optimistic that maybe Russia is going to be suspended, which was the outcome. But well, this was rather unusual in my opinion. But yeah, what do you want me to say?
Yeah, I guess that their complaint is about the temporary exclusion for a member federation.
Yes.
So I guess that is specifically what they're talking about here. So I guess
yeah, they were also trying to be they were also trying to become a part of the case. I mean, when there is a case at the FIDE ethics, you have a chance to crash it in a way, but you need to have a very good reason to do it. I mean, well, you have to prove that you are directly, personally have interest in the case. I cannot fully come up with some kind of reasonable example, but well, that is the case. I mean, let's imagine that Russia had invaded not only Ukraine, but Georgia or Moldova. They haven't invaded Georgia, but I mean, then if the Ukrainian Chess Federation was doing it, the Georgian could say, hang on, we are also involved in this, and they would have a reasonable thing for doing that in a way. So it is possible, but that the FIDE Council would be part. I mean, you saw that the FIDE Ethics Committee says, no, we are representing FIDE in this case. So you doing it is well, not correct in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how that was. But also when this happened, I mean, you see, it's like a court case. We get a copy of the request from the FIDE Council, and we have I think 2 weeks or 21 days to come with our evaluation of the situation. And while it is the FIDE Ethics president chairperson, Mr. Siegerman, who takes a decision, he's obliged to listen to our arguments. So it really goes as a normal court case in that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the FIDE Ethics Committee declined for the FIDE Council to intervene, and they gave all their explanations here. We won't go through all of their justifications for that. Okay, so maybe we should start with the allegations in the complaint.
Yeah. The first one, well, it's something I have made probably literally 100 tweets about. But
I just want to start off with actually, before we go into this, the Chess Federation of Russia's Board of Trustees, and I think specifically their Board of Trustees is the one that has all these big names. But like, if you look on the website, it's an incredible list of people. They're like ex-deputy prime ministers that are heads of massive corporations. There's the mayor of Moscow, and I think at least one other mayor. Like, I can't. If you compare this board with the board of any other chess federation, it's just vastly different. It would be comparable to like the U.S. Chess Federation having, Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and an ex-president and, stuff like this. It's crazy how many very, very high-profile people are on this board.
I think that's exactly correctly. I mean, we are talking about top 5, top 10 politicians in the country, and we are talking about the same in a financial manner. I mean, well, as there is so many, they are not all top 10. They can't be, because there is more than 10 there. But it is extremely powerful people, and well, it gives away the status of chess in Russia, which in an isolation is extremely impressive, as you say. But well, unfortunately, they are waging a war at the moment, and this complicates things.
Yeah. Okay. So the actual complaint itself, then maybe you should explain.
Yeah. I mean, well, it is that chess federations or any individuals within FIDE has the obligation not to bring the game of chess or FIDE into disrepute. And our argument is that, well, when the Chess Federation of Russia chooses to associate themselves with Putin's spokesperson, with the Minister of Defense in Russia, with oligarchs who are heavily sanctioned because they have helped Russia, well, invade a neighboring country, which leads to a huge amount of debt. That brings, in our opinion, the game of chess into disrepute, because, I mean, we are associating ourselves with what we call war criminals. So we think that Chess Federation of Russia is bringing chess into disrepute by having these peoples in their leadership. And as Dvorkovich is part of this board, we also think that, well, him sitting in a formal setting on a board together with these people brings FIDE into disrepute, because, well, when a president chooses to be publicly associated with certain people, I mean, there is some kind of association there, and that's what he was sentenced for. But that is basically the first charge, that, well, you can't do that.
Okay, and the second one is against Dvorkovich specifically, which, yeah, this is what
no, I think
no,
I mean, you're still within the first charge. I mean, I don't know if you want to jump to the results or you want to go over all the charges first.
I think the charges against Dvorkovich specifically are kind of relevant.
The charges against Dvorkovich specifically is that, well, he was the leader of something called Skolkovo, which is a Russian high-tech thing. I mean, it's supposed to be like an equivalent of what we know as Silicon Valley in the United States, which is sort of a hub for technological development. They were sanctioned in August 2022, actually a few days before the FIDE elections, for having had 10-year ties to the Russian military. I mean, they have been dealing with companies who are doing missiles, who are doing tanks, who are doing aviation things, and so on and so forth. And our argument is that, well, you know, Dvorkovich was the leader of this company from when he became FIDE president until 3 weeks into the full-scale invasion. And well, I mean, if they for 10 years have been helping Russia with weapons, it also means that Dvorkovich has had responsibility for that as the leader of this. Secondly, in terms of Skolkovo, Dvorkovich resigned on the 15th of March, or he was sacked, in our opinion. Suddenly, after he made this famous statement in Mother Jones, where he was arguing, or he was saying some kind of mild but sympathetic words towards Ukrainian civilians, there was a huge political pressure against him within Russia. The leader of the most powerful political party wanted Dvorkovich to be sacked from Skolkovo. That led to that the day after, or maybe the actual day, Dvorkovich made a statement on the Skolkovo website, which was, in our interpretation, very nationalistic and pro-war. It has also led to that the state of Ukraine has put Dvorkovich on a list of people who have supported the war. The state of Ukraine's official position is that Dvorkovich has publicly supported the war and refers to Ukrainians as Nazis. I understand this is not the point of the view of the chess world, but this is the point of view of official Ukraine. So we were trying to say that, well, by being, you know, indirectly involved in weapons productions and responsible for it, and for making this statement, Dvorkovich has brought the game of chess into disrepute. Well, this point we didn't win, but this was our allegation. And the third allegation is, in some ways, perhaps the most serious. This is that the Russian Chess Federation are doing chess activities in illegally occupied territories. I mean, well, Russia has, by law and also by arms, decided that they consider, I think, Crimea since 2014, but more recently Donbass, Donetsk, I forgot, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions as part of Russia. And that goes against all kind of international law. I mean, the UN has stated that no organization should do activities in these territories as Russians. But the Chess Federation of Russia is saying, well, by Russian law, these regions is part of our country, and we have to follow Russian law. And it is our responsibility to make sure that people can play chess in these regions. So they are doing it very softly, and they're arguing like that. You saw yesterday in Russian media TASS that Dvorkovich was referring to it as humanitarian acts. So that is the Russian point of view. Our point of view is that it is a deliberate tactic by the state of Russia. I mean, the Kremlin has confirmed it, that basically you have to Russify these regions. So what they're doing is that what formerly used to be Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian championships, Ukrainian chess clubs has become Russian chess clubs. And that is actually heavily illegal, because what you are doing is that you are changing the nationality, the identity of people. You're changing them from being Ukrainians to being Russians. I mean, well, the end process of that is that these kids turns 18 and are forced to go to the Russian army, and they're going to kill Ukrainians, etc. and such. And well, that is very clear from a legal perspective that you can't do that. Also, I mean, the IOC quite recently actually kicked out the Russian National Olympic Committee because of activities and recognition of these areas. So this was a very important point for us, which we won against the Chess Federation of Russia, but we lost against Dvorkovich because the Ethics Commission decided that Dvorkovich has no responsibility for these breaches.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know like how much responsibility Dvorkovich has directly for kind of things like this. But I guess if I was going to play devil's advocate a little bit, I would say there are people living in these areas that want to play chess, and how do they play chess? Like, let's say this conflict has gone on for 2 years, I guess. But let's say it goes on for another 3-4 years. Okay, 10 years, sorry. No, but in these areas specifically, with from a chess point of view is what I mean. Like, people can't play chess there for the last 2 years. Maybe they can't play it for the next 3-5 years. Like, how do they get to play chess?
I understand your point of view. I mean, from our perspective, is that well, I mean, there's nothing that prevents them from having chess events there. You can just agree with I mean, the Russian Chess Federation can send a letter to the Ukrainian Chess Federation that says that, well, we would actually like to hold some events there. Can you please be so kind to rate them? We acknowledge it's under your jurisdictions per FIDE rules. I understand the problem.
That would mean the Federation going against Russian law, though. Like, that's probably a lot to ask of a chess federation to go up against their own government.
Yeah, and that is sort of that is the thing that has to be weighed against each other. I understand the problem, but well, it is a matter of balance, and I think, well, the IOC and the UN has clearly decided that the balance falls in favor of they cannot do that. I mean, what happened now, for instance, is the last Russian championship, right? It included a team from Crimea and a team from Luhansk and from Kherson, right? So, I mean, we are starting to accept these regions as part of Russia if we start rating these events, which we did. I mean, well, even famous players like Grishuk and Dubov was playing against a team from Crimea, right? Where you can see that the players, like I said in a Ukrainian football shirt that a friend gave me recently, but these guys were sitting in, I mean, you have players representing Crimea sitting in a Russia shirt, right? Well, that is problematic. I mean, it's famous players who has to play against them and such. I mean, where is the border? It's difficult, but it starts making these regions de facto a part of Russia, and well, that the UN has decided not to, that we don't find acceptable. Of course, we could start. I mean, but what they did in football, for instance, is that in 2014 Russia annexed Crimea. Then the Crimean football team tried to play in the Russian league. UEFA said, no, you can't do that. So they created a separate Crimean football league as a way to solve that problem. It is possible to have practical solutions if you want to solve that, but that's not what they are doing. And well, if you look at the Russian Chess Federation website, they participated in meetings with the Russian government where they are talking about exactly incorporating these regions within a Russian framework. And yeah, I mean, it has a problem that these people cannot as naturally play chess tournaments as they could if it was well, if they played in, I mean, we understand Russia has physical control over some of these areas, but I mean, well, you have to make, well, you have to balance what is the most important things in a way. And if you look at the sort of legal definitions of genocide, I understand it's too strong a word, but changing the national identity of people, changing Ukrainians to participate in Russian championships is a very, very serious offense, because it is a part of fulfilling the target of making Ukraine non-existent, which is the sort of defined goal of the war in Ukraine, unfortunately. So I understand it has consequences, but I mean, well, it has bigger consequences for these guys that their chess clubs is bombed. Maybe we should do something about that. Maybe we should try and rebuild them, and so on and so forth, right? So, I mean, there is a huge problem of Ukrainian kids having been kidnapped and deported to Russia. There can be a disagreement about the numbers, but that it is happening and is a fact, I think, is not disputed by anyone but Russia. And so, I mean, there is quite big things at stake. And while framing this as something innocent, just doing good by organizing chess events, it is not correct, because it's a deliberate attempt by the Russian state. And of course, a lot of these activities will be positive. I mean, well, look at Karyakin. He goes to schools in occupied regions of Russia playing chess with kids. And he tells us what's wrong with that. I mean, I'm just doing something nice to kids. These kids are obviously happy about it. What is the problem? And well, it makes me the bad guy saying that, no, you're supporting something that's genocidal, and that has to have consequences, right? So that's my point of view.
Okay. So when it comes to other sports being operated within these occupied areas of Ukraine, how do other sports deal with that? Like, I assume this is not, they're not just doing chess and nothing else. I assume that they're doing, like, you know, this is part of a wider program to kind of incorporate Ukrainian territories into like a Russian sporting structure. So how have other sports dealt with those incidents?
I'm not fully into details. I mean, again, doing research on these things are not so easy. I mean, for a start, it's in a different language with a different alphabet, and so on and so forth. But as I mentioned, within football, well, Crimean teams and now occupied regions teams are not allowed to participate in sort of in Russian leagues, right? So there will be rules about that, but I'm not into details there. I mean, there was sort of cases about that back in 2014 and 16, I think, and well, it was solved, as I said, by having having a local Crimean league is considered acceptable, but having these regions participate there is not. And as you saw also, that the FIDE Ethics Committee said that, well, the verdict against the Russian Chess Federation can be made suspended, but then they actually have to stop the activities, including that no player nor team from occupied regions can participate in their events.
Okay. And just as a last thing on this, let's say the Russian Federation wants to continue team events, including teams from Ukraine. There's nothing really stopping them from organizing a kind of private event where they invite what other teams they want from. You know, they had some event where it was just like some kind of cities, friendly cities, something like that, with cities from different countries. Like, there's nothing really stopping them from.
I think the FIDE charter stops them. I think that the FIDE certainly has the power to tell the Chess Federation of Russia well, you can not do that, or rather, if you do it, we're gonna sanction you. I mean, FIDE has the oversight.
But they could invite Ukrainian players to play a tournament in Moscow, and no one.
I think
that wouldn't be
no,
illegal for just as an example. You know, if Ivanchuk wanted to go play a tournament in Russia, they could invite him, and if he was happy with that, he could go play. Like, there's nothing because we have this structure in chess where a lot of events are completely outside of FIDE's jurisdiction. You know, when we look at like football, for example, basically FIFA is the governing body for all of football matches, even down to a very low level. Obviously, they have to go through certain structures, but you know, the governing body for the lower leagues is still governed by a higher body, and eventually FIFA's at the top. Like, they're still ultimately responsible, and they can do things like, say, to the Crimean teams, you know, you can't do this. Whereas FIDE doesn't have that power over the vast majority of chess that's played.
I think they legally have the power, but it's not how it's exercised. But I think they have the possibility to stop things. I mean, well, for instance, at some point the argument was that Kayakin is only doing unrated events in Moscow. We have nothing to do with that. For a start, they have started rating them, so FIDE do acknowledge them in some way. But also, I mean, well, we have these disrepute clauses that can be used. But of course, you're very right that chess is much more loosely organized. I mean, in other sports, for Wimbledon, you qualify. For YKC, you get invited. It's a huge difference. And no, you're fully right. If Ivanchuk wanted to play a tournament in Moscow tomorrow, there would, in principle, be nothing wrong with that, because that is his own personal choice. What there is something wrong with is that that the Crimea is juridically part of the Russian Chess Federation, and that they have team events with teams from sort of illegally annexed territories. That is wrong. But you're completely right that if the Ukrainian team chose to show up in Moscow and play against the Russian team, it would not be illegal. Quite some problems that the Ukrainians would not do that, but that would not be illegal.
Yeah. Of course, like most Ukrainians wouldn't do that. But there would be people from the occupied territories that okay, you get a trip to a nice tournament, you play against some good players, you maybe get some prize money. Like, I can see a world where people do things like that, and all it requires is them changing the format and the name of the tournament slightly, and like things would just carry on. Like, and I suspect that's what is going to happen as well.
I mean, they can do like Kayakin chose to do. They can change the affiliation with the Ukrainian Chess Federation to Russian. They can change their nationality to Russian, or they don't even have to do that. But what they can't do is they cannot represent Kherson, Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea, Zaporizhia, etc., because they are Ukrainian cities. So you cannot have a situation where you say these regions are part of Russia. You cannot have the Russian Chess Federation making events in these regions, advertising these regions, and you cannot have the Chess Federation of Russia saying we have a team tournament with a team from Kherson, and you put up a Russian flag. That is illegal because that is changing the status of these from Ukrainian to Russian. That's the illegal part. But I'm fully. I mean, if the Crimean team decided to, well, we come from a different city in Russia, we represent them, there is no problem.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as we can maybe jump around a little bit now. As far as this specific charge goes, this is the one that got them suspended for 2 years, pending the appeal and pending their 60 days to stop these activities. So my question is that the maximum penalty that FIDE can apply to them? Is there, because it doesn't seem to me that, like, FIDE doesn't have super strong powers over these things.
Yes and no. The FIDE Ethics Committee can suspend them temporarily up to 5 years, but the FIDE General Assembly can kick them out forever if they choose to. I mean, that is just by a majority.
But I mean, like in terms of like actual consequences for Russia, like what would be the material difference?
I think for this one, for what happens right now is that if they don't oblige to the terms of getting it to a suspended sanction, which by all the statements since really doesn't seem to be the case, the Russian Chess Federation is suspended for 2 years, which means that they cannot attend FIDE meetings, for instance, and they cannot vote and things like that. So they are suspended.
Why doesn't that affect Dvorkovich?
Because he's the president of FIDE. I mean,
he represents he is on the FIDE.
No.
He has a FIDE profile. He's a Russian player.
Yeah, but it doesn't represent. It doesn't affect individuals. Russian players can still play. I mean, Russian arbiters can be arbiters. Russian politicians can still be politicians. It's a suspension of the Russian Chess Federation as a federation within FIDE. So I agree. It has very weak consequences, but it's still quite symbolic in the way. But this is the sanction that exists.
They don't have any harsher sanctions available.
Not the ethics commission. The ethics commission's maximum penalty is a 5-year suspension. That is what they can do. Then it's up to, I mean, well, if the rest of the chess world thought this is completely unacceptable, then any country can file a suggestion to the General Assembly saying, we think Russia should be excluded from FIDE. And then if a majority votes so, that's it. But the ethics commission has the power to suspend people for 5 years, but they don't have the power to sort of terminate them fully. That lies maybe within the council, but mainly with the General Assembly.
Okay, and maybe I can jump to the end.
I think also, I mean, imagine you did something. I think the ethics commission can suspend you. They can ban you for a certain time. But if you have to be actually sort of excluded lifetime membership of FIDE, I think we need the General Assembly to do that. So I think this is generally standard.
We'll find out one day.
Yeah. You will. I mean,
hopefully not soon. I've been playing pretty well recently.
Yeah.
Okay, so
suspiciously well, I would say.
Yeah, I've had to. Well, yeah.
Okay, that's just going in the
lost some games as well.
Sorry.
So Dvorkovich has been sanctioned to a reprimand, which okay, it's kind of nothing, right?
I mean, well, yes and no. I don't want to down target. I mean, Dvorkovich has been found guilty in 1 out of 3 charges. He has been found guilty for bringing that he sits on the board with Peskov and Shoigu in the Russian Chess Federation Board of Trustees. And by that, he is not acting as a role model. He's doing damage to FIDE's reputation and so on and so forth. I mean, it means that I legally now can say that Dvorkovich has brought the chess of the game into disrepute. And, well, that is something that we can do that. It also means that he has acted wrong, and he's strongly urged to change that behavior. But you are right. I mean, well, we asked for Dvorkovich to be removed as FIDE president, which the ethics commission actually can do, and that they don't do. And in general, well, the criticism of Dvorkovich in this verdict is very much there, but it's still like with I mean, with well, the gloves are not off. They're very kind towards him in a way. They show understanding, and they I mean, have generally quite. I mean, sympathetic is too strong, but they have a lot of understanding for his situation and so on and so forth. So, but you are right that, well, he has been reprimanded, but absolutely nothing has changed except for that, right?
Mm-hmm. And he has to remove himself from the.
No, he's urged to do it. He doesn't have to.
He's urged. He doesn't have to do it. But if he doesn't do it, then he would still be.
Well, then at least I would argue
he would
that
still be associated with improper people.
Yeah.
You know.
So then he is at least deliberately choosing to keep breaching the FIDE charter and bringing the game of chess into disrepute, and he will face daily tweets from me, but that's probably as strong as consequence as there will be.
Yeah, and it is kind of strange that he is allowed to sit on the board of like any president is allowed to sit on the board of one federation. This doesn't seem very neutral. Like, I think in general it seems like a bad principle that people can do this.
I generally agree, and the FIDE charter says that he cannot be, base his decisions on influence from others, being in chess federations, being in government, and so on and so forth. But that he's not found guilty of in the verdict. On the contrary, they say that he has acted solely in the interest of FIDE and has not breached these things. So they don't think that he has done anything based on pressure from them. But generally, yes, it would be more reasonable not to, in a way. But I mean, well, in the political world, the real political world, it might be like that. For instance, well, my wife is a high-ranked Lithuanian politician. I mean, she cannot be part of any kind of FIDE board and so on. While in other countries, you can be part of other things as long as it's declared in a way. So there is different rules. And I mean, I guess, well, Dvorkovich is arguing that this is a good way of being a bridgehead between Russian chess and the world of chess. And well, that is an argument. I disagree that it's
he definitely does a good job of maintaining that bridge.
I mean, yeah, you can say that. Well, I mean, but I generally think it would be better to disallow these things, but that's how it is. I mean, you can also argue, is it reasonable that Dvorkovich was the head of Skolko while being president of FIDE? Of course, the problem is that being president of FIDE is a non-paid job. So it's also reasonable that people have to make a living somehow, right? So there is pros and cons of these things. Else we risk only having rich persons or state-sponsored persons as head of FIDE.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely people should be able to have different roles, and it's I don't generally have a problem with that. It's just when there's a potential clash of interest.
I think well, we can disagree with the rules, which we probably both do, but the rules are not unheard of in any particular way.
Yeah. So what happens next?
Well, there is 21 days of appeal, and as the verdict was out Friday, I guess we are down to 17 or something like that. The Chess Federation of Russia has stated that they would definitely appeal. Yesterday, I think Dvorkovich stated that he would appeal, and I think the Ukrainian Chess Federation is also going to appeal. So I think we're going to have a next round in the FIDE Ethics Commission as expected. FIDE has also, or maybe Dvorkovich has announced that FIDE is also considering changing the rules, making the Ethics Commission less powerful. And the Russian Chess Federation has said that they will use the General Assembly to overturn the verdict. I would like to point out that there is more than 60 days till the General Assembly starts. So, in my opinion, I mean, unless they sort of fulfill the appeals, the suspension conditions, they're not going to be allowed to enter the General Assembly. But that's a different thing. I actually think.
Well, I mean, their board member will be there.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And also, no, again, it's like, of course, they can get a different country to come up with that suggestion. I mean, you saw when Dvorkovich was sort of, when FIDE changed the rules to having no limit terms for the president, which means Dvorkovich can run in the next election. I consider it obvious that this was a push from FIDE changing the rules. But of course, officially, it was 33 independent countries, member federations, who just decided that this was an awesome idea and sent a suggestion to the FIDE Council. And this is, of course, going to happen again. I hope that some member federations will counter-suggest and have Russia actually, for real, excluded from FIDE. I understand they will not win the vote, but this is sort of the options in a way.
Okay, so essentially, when the General Assembly begins, they will just overrule all of this, and they'll probably get rid of the FIDE.
I don't know if they can actually overrule a FIDE ethics verdict. Maybe the General Assembly can more or less do what they want. Actually, I mean, they can definitely remove the FIDE ethics committee, but that would be hugely embarrassing, and that would, of course, create quite some process in a way. So I don't know.
Would it be more embarrassing than having the Russian Federation banned? Like, I don't think they really care about that.
Well, to be honest, I think what's happening right now, and this I'm basing on what you see happens in Russia, that the relevant thing going on right now is not the pressure from the world of chess. To be honest, the world of chess is weak. You have basically seen no chess federation making any kind of meaningful statements on this. FIDE would be able to just hush it up and move on. The problem or the interesting part is the pressure coming from Russia. I mean, few hours after the verdict, Peskov, Putin's spokesperson, spoke about it. Then the next day, the spokesperson for the Russian foreign ministry, Shakarova, spoke about it. Yesterday, Dvorkovich came with a statement that included the term new territories of Russia, which is either a slip up from his side or a conscious choice. And well, that, in my opinion, is a criminal statement. Then later in the day, Filatov, the president of the Russian Chess Federation, came with a statement saying that, well, Russia, Dvorkovich is jumping left, jumping right. He's deceiving us. He never fulfilled the promises. He wanted to remove sanctions against Russian chess teams. He didn't do it. I mean, you can see there is actually a fight going on there where there is pressure on Dvorkovich to do things. And I think the relevant thing is the Kremlin putting enough pressure on Dvorkovich so he has to do certain things? I think that is where things gets interesting at the moment and where the fight is. And I have absolutely no knowledge of that. But you can see when there is multiple articles in TASS about it, when you can see that the really big guns, I mean, Peskov and Shakarov is the highest spokespersons of Russia, when they have intimate knowledge of the case and they make fun of it or they talk seriously about it, well, that is where the relevant things are happening, sorry to say. And I mean, from our perspective, of course, if they put a lot of pressure on Dvorkovich, he might be forced to do things that will feel unacceptable to the chess world. So what Dvorkovich is trying to balance is, well, doing enough not to get pushed too much from the Kremlin and doing enough not to be sort of actually inconvened in the world of chess. That's how I see the situation at the moment.
Okay, so do you ever feel nervous that Dvorkovich is actually much more reasonable than a different Russian president of FIDE would be? For example, when you see statements from people from the Russian Federation, they're much they clearly want a lot more than Dvorkovich has given them, and this has gone on for quite a long time. So, like, to some degree, he's definitely not giving them everything that they want, and there is potentially a danger that at some point he just gets replaced by Filatov or someone like that, who will basically reinstate Russian teams. He'll remove all sanctions, like things like that.
That would be the argument from their side. I mean, I would much rather have Dvorkovich as a Russian president than Putin. I think he's much milder than him. I don't think.
No, I mean as
I understand.
FIDE, not
I understand
as
that.
of the country.
I know. I'm trying to make a point that
okay.
I don't think Dvorkovich privately thinks it's a good idea to invade Ukraine. He would much rather have they didn't. The problem is that, well, he's operating in this world and he takes care of Russians' interest, despite that he might not agree with them privately. I think Dvorkovich is the ideal president from a Russian perspective. I mean, they had a more aggressive president of the Boxing Federation, Umar Kremlev, but that led to the consequences that they were kicked out from the IOC. Boxing is not an Olympic sport anymore, and a competing federation has been founded with a lot of Western members, led by Boris van der Forst, a Dutch national. What Dvorkovich is capable of doing is that he's a very nice guy. We have all played football with him and so on, and he doesn't make any mistakes, or he makes some, like, for instance, yesterday. But generally, Dvorkovich, I mean, you can have a good cop or a bad cop attitude to sort of exercising Russian power. And Dvorkovich has trying to have sanctions against Karyakin, but not Nepomniachtchi. He's trying to not have Russian sponsors, but satellite countries, Russian sponsors like Turlov from Kazakhstan and so on. So, I mean, well, I think you should see Dvorkovich as someone who is having a soft power strategy of keeping influence in Russia, keeping control of the chess world, and not overdoing it to an extent where he's kicked out. The problem is that, well, Filatov would be a more suitable candidate in principle for the Kremlin, but it would mean that he would lose. Filatov would not be elected by the world of chess because he's too extreme.
You don't think so? Like, because I read the letters when they
maybe you are right. But the point is, I mean, if Filatov was the president, it would at least create a considerable opposition. Now you are down to an opposition, which is the guy sitting next to you, and Andrei Borisovich, which I mean, well, made a horrible election result. No one is debating that. So, I mean, it is a balance. I mean, what Dvorkovich is doing is that he's kept control of the World Chess Federation. He's doing that brilliantly, and he's tried to minimize sanctions towards Russians on quite on a successful terms. But this verdict, of course, is a huge problem for him in that sense, and that means that people are now asking, okay, why can't he deliver on such, and why can't we just change who is in the jury and things like that, right? So, I mean, that is the pressure he's facing right now. But that is my general point of view, that Dvorkovich is doing an excellent job in keeping Russian sort of control of the world of chess. And well, if he was doing it by being Filatov, he would fail. I mean, this is what Dvorkovich has been doing historically. He was
yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree, to be honest. Like, okay, if you look at when they removed term limits, those letters that were written to FIDE supporting this, those were bought and paid for. Like, I'll happily accuse the people who wrote those letters of it, and if they want to sue me, we'll go to court and we'll do discovery, and then we'll see what happens. Like, those were bought and paid for. So,
I mean,
like, they'll just do the same thing again.
They are not bought in the terms of that there was actual payment for this specific thing. I think they reflect the situation that if someone is so powerful and so undisputed, you will have people sucking up to them simply because that you will later get services in a way. So I think it's done in a more informal way, but who knows? Maybe I'm too Scandinavian. I mean, in Scandinavia, you will reward people by being head of the appeals committee and procedures.
Yeah, like things should be. Like, that's what we want.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Congrats, Laurent, by the way. But yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so that's so lots going on in the chess world this week.
Yeah.
And that was it. So
yeah, hope you
thanks for letting everybody understand. I'm sure this will have massive viewership. This episode.
Yes.
I am kind of disappointed that people are like, I will criticize you about this as, your PR friendly friend, that you decided to announce this decision during the Clash of Claims and during the last round of Norway Chess. Is this the kind of promotional genius that led you to your election result, perhaps?
Yeah, I actually think that this verdict shows that the FIDE committee is the most independent committee in FIDE based on the verdict. I think they released the verdict when it was ready, so I don't think they thought.
No,
okay,
but you released it before they did. You posted.
Yeah,
you mentioned it before they posted about it. You could have waited until the next morning when everything was quiet, nothing was going on. Norway Chess was finished. Everybody's waiting for the next match to start. You could have timed this, and then it would be the only thing people were paying attention to.
But that is because I think FIDE is well, if they postpone the decision, they get time to create their planned media response and so on and so forth, and perhaps get in touch with allies. I wanted to sort of fasten the decision and hope that some chess federations from the West would speak out. That they haven't done to a certain extent, but also, well, generally, I stand for transparency. So that if the verdict is out, I wanted to get it out. Probably also, I mean, I was very happy about it. I wanted to share the news. I mean, Magnus had an important Armageddon game. I didn't tell him about it in the break between that. That professional I actually am. But else, I told more or less everybody I could meet. And well, to be honest, while the Clash of Claims obviously has much more viewership, I don't think there is a huge. I mean, you might care about both events. I care about both events, but I don't think there is a complete overlap of these two groups. Also, this other group has millions, and we are like 10 people, right? So I don't think. I mean, I could literally just have emailed the guys. Who cares about it?
Fair enough. And how did Magnus react to the decision?
Oh, that is. I think he noticed that his coach seemed more happy about that than him winning the chess event. But that's that I was unable to hide. Maybe he should see it as I think he's so good that I expected him to win the chess event, while winning a case and defeat the ethics committee is not something you do every day. At least not for me. So. On that note, with Magnus, I haven't used the word golf yet in this podcast, but let's try and get it in. That we had a very enjoyable time. He played 10 rounds of golf and 10 rounds of chess. So that is, I think that's balance, and it seemed to work out, at least on the chessboard.
Sounds like your ideal tournament.
Oh, very much so.
Perfect. Okay, I guess we should end on that note then.
Yeah, on a high note, on a golf. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.